Hello there, and welcome to Worlds Beyond Seen. Tonight, we're going to embark on a journey into one of the strangest, most alien places in our known universe. And here's the remarkable thing: you don't need a spaceship to get there. You don't need to leave our planet at all, because the most alien landscape in our solar system isn't on Mars or on one of Jupiter's icy moons or anywhere among the stars. It's right here, beneath the waves, in the deepest parts of our own ocean. Before we begin this extraordinary voyage into the abyss, I'd like to invite you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue exploring these fascinating topics together, bringing you stories of wonder from the farthest reaches of space and the deepest corners of our own world. And if you enjoy falling asleep to stories of science and discovery, you've found the right place. So settle in, get comfortable. Maybe you're listening late at night, with the world quiet around you. Maybe you're looking for something to help your mind drift peacefully into sleep. Either way, let this be a slow journey, one where you don't need to rush, one where each discovery unfolds at its own gentle pace. Because what we're about to explore is vast, it's strange, it's beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, and it's been hiding right beneath us all along. The mapping paradox. We know Mars better than our own ocean. There's a phrase you might have heard before, one that sounds almost too strange to be true. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about our own ocean floor. It's repeated so often in marine science circles that it's become something of a cliché, a well-worn comparison that nevertheless carries an uncomfortable truth. But what does it really mean? And how did we end up with better maps of a planet 140 million miles away than the world beneath our own waves? Let's start with some numbers, because the statistics themselves tell a striking story. As of 2025, about 25% of Earth's seafloor has been mapped using modern, high-resolution techniques. That's 1/4. The remaining 3/4, vast expanses, covering hundreds of millions of square kilometers, exist in a kind of cartographic twilight, known only through rough estimates and satellite-derived predictions. Compare that to Mars. The entire surface of the red planet, every crater and canyon, every ancient riverbed and towering volcano has been mapped to a resolution of about 100 meters. That means we can see features on Mars roughly the size of a football field. For 60% of Mars, the resolution is even better, around 20 meters, detailed enough to distinguish individual boulders and small geological formations. The Moon, we've mapped every single square meter of the lunar surface, some areas down to a resolution of just 7 meters. Venus, despite being shrouded in thick clouds, has been mapped by radar to a resolution of 100 meters across 98% of its surface. These are worlds we've never set foot on, worlds separated from us by the vacuum of space and hundreds of millions of kilometers, and yet we can create detailed atlases of their surfaces. But Earth's ocean floor, the high-resolution mapping we have detailed enough to be useful for navigation, for detecting airplane wreckage, for understanding the intricate topography of the deep, covers less than 1/4 of the total area. In some estimates, less than 0.05% of the ocean floor has been mapped to the kind of resolution where we could actually see small features, the underwater equivalent of being able to distinguish a car from a truck. The irony is almost painful. We live on an ocean planet. More than 70% of Earth's surface is covered by water. The ocean isn't just a feature of our world, it defines it. From space, Earth appears as a brilliant blue marble, its seas glittering, its continents mere interruptions in an endless expanse of water. And yet most of that blue expanse, the world beneath its shimmering surface, remains as unknown to us as the dark side of distant moons. Why is this? Why have we mapped alien worlds with such precision while leaving our own ocean depths shrouded in mystery? The answer begins with a simple but fundamental problem. Water blocks almost everything we use to observe the world. Light, our primary tool for seeing and understanding, penetrates only a few hundred feet into seawater before being absorbed completely. Even in the clearest tropical waters, Sunlight can reach perhaps 1,000 feet down on a bright day. Below that, darkness is absolute and permanent. The average depth of the ocean is about 12,000 feet, more than 2 miles. The deepest point, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, plunges down nearly 36,000 feet, almost 7 miles beneath the surface. For all practical purposes, when we try to look at the deep ocean, we might as well be trying to peer through solid rock. Electromagnetic radiation, radio waves, radar, the light spectrum we depend on simply doesn't work in water the way it works in air or the vacuum of space. When we map Mars or the Moon, we use orbiting satellites equipped with cameras and radar. These instruments can scan vast swaths of terrain quickly, building detailed maps from hundreds or thousands of miles above the surface. Light from the sun bounces off Martian rocks and into spacecraft cameras. Radar pulses penetrate Venus's clouds and bounce back, revealing the hidden landscape below. But send radar into Earth's ocean, and it barely penetrates the surface. The radio waves scatter and weaken almost instantly. Visible light, as we've said, makes it only a few hundred feet before the ocean swallows it whole. To map the ocean floor, we can't rely on the distant, sweeping gaze of satellites. We have to get close, very close. The primary tool for mapping the seafloor is sonar sound navigation and ranging. Unlike light, sound travels beautifully through water. A sonar device mounted to the hull of a ship sends out pulses of sound in a fan-shaped pattern. These sound waves travel down through the water column, bounce off the seafloor, and return to the ship. By measuring the time it takes for each pulse to make the round trip, scientists can calculate the depth of the ocean at that point. Modern multi-beam sonar systems are remarkably sophisticated. They can emit as many as 60 pulses per second, creating millions of data points as the ship moves forward. This builds up a detailed picture of the seafloor's topography, not just how deep it is, but its shape, its texture, whether it's flat or steeply sloping, rough or smooth. But here's the catch. This technique requires a ship to physically sail over the area to be mapped, and ships are slow. A research vessel might cover perhaps 10,000 square kilometers in a single day under ideal conditions. That sounds impressive until you remember that Earth's oceans cover approximately 360 million square kilometers. To map the entire seafloor using ships equipped with sonar would take hundreds of years of continuous surveying. The costs would run into tens of billions of dollars. The ships would need to burn vast quantities of fuel, and they'd have to navigate some of the most hostile and remote waters on the planet: storm-lashed seas in the Southern Ocean, ice-choked passages near the poles, sweltering tropical regions where equipment overheats and fails. Satellites mapping Mars don't have these problems. They orbit steadily, tirelessly, covering the entire planet systematically. There are no storms to avoid, no ice fields to navigate, no fuel to burn. Gravity and momentum do the work. It's elegant, efficient, and above all, it's comprehensive. We do have one satellite trick for mapping the ocean floor, but it's a blunt instrument. Satellites equipped with radar altimeters can measure the height of the sea surface with extraordinary precision down to a few centimeters. And here's where it gets interesting. The sea surface isn't perfectly flat. Where there's an underwater mountain, a seamount rising thousands of feet from the abyssal plain, the extra mass creates a slightly stronger gravitational pull. This pulls seawater toward it, creating a tiny bump on the ocean's surface, perhaps a meter or two tall and spread over dozens of kilometers. The bump is imperceptible to ships or the naked eye, but satellites can detect it. Similarly, ocean trenches create slight dips in the sea surface. By mapping these subtle variations in sea level across the entire ocean, scientists can infer the basic topography of the seafloor beneath the locations of major ridges, trenches, seamounts, and plateaus. This technique has given us a complete map of the entire ocean floor at a resolution of about 5 kilometers. That means we can identify features larger than about 3 miles across. It's an incredible achievement, a testament to human ingenuity and the precision of modern satellite technology. But 5 kilometers is a very coarse resolution. At that scale, You can see the major features, the mid-Atlantic ridge, snaking down the center of the Atlantic Ocean, the Mariana Trench carving a dark scar into the Pacific floor, but you can't see the details. You can't see individual hydrothermal vents, each one a chimney of life in the darkness. You can't see the scattered wrecks of ships or planes, the small canyons and valleys, the intricate patterns carved by underwater currents. For those details, you need the sonar, you need the ships, and most of the ocean simply hasn't been visited yet. This is why the comparison holds. We genuinely do have more detailed, more complete maps of Mars, the Moon, and Venus than we have of Earth's seafloor. It's not an exaggeration. It's not a figure of speech. It's a stark reflection of the challenges inherent in exploring an alien environment that just happens to exist on our own planet. And there's another dimension to this, one that goes beyond mere mapping. When we talk about knowing a place, we don't just mean having a map, we mean understanding what's there. We mean observing it, studying it, sampling it, discovering its secrets. In 2014, when Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 vanished over the Indian Ocean, search teams discovered something unsettling. The projected search area, a remote stretch of seabed in the southern Indian Ocean, was very poorly mapped. Ship tracks lines showing where vessels had previously collected sonar data were sparse, scattered like forgotten trails through unmapped wilderness. Most of the region had never been surveyed in detail. Searchers essentially had to map the seafloor before they could even begin looking for the wreckage. Underwater vehicles needed detailed bathymetric maps to navigate safely, to avoid collisions with unseen seamounts or canyons. Without those maps, the search for an object the size of an aircraft was like searching for something lost in a completely dark room. You couldn't even see the floor beneath your feet. A search for a lost object the size of an aircraft would have had a better start if that object had been lost on Mars. The Martian surface, for all its alien strangeness, is better known to us than vast stretches of our own ocean floor. This isn't just a curiosity. It has real-world consequences. The ocean floor is home to critical undersea cables that carry the vast majority of global internet traffic. It harbors rich ecosystems that we're only beginning to understand. It holds clues to Earth's geological history, evidence of ancient earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. It may contain valuable mineral deposits, resources that humanity might one day need. And beneath those cold, dark waters, in the least accessible parts of the planet, life thrives in forms so bizarre, so utterly unlike anything on the surface, that they challenge our very understanding of biology. These creatures aren't just adapted to an alien environment, they're proof that alien environments exist right here, beneath the waves we see from shore. The ocean floor is more than unmapped. It's unexplored in the truest sense. It's a frontier that's remained tantalizingly out of reach, not because it's far away, but because it's hidden beneath a barrier we can't easily penetrate. And as we'll see, when we finally do venture into those depths, what we find is nothing short of otherworldly. So let's descend. Let's leave the sunlit surface behind and journey downward through the layers of the ocean, past the limits of light, past the point where human beings can survive unprotected, down into the abyss where the real strangeness begins. Descent into the abyss, the ocean's vertical zones. Imagine standing at the shore, looking out across the water. The ocean before you seems like a single, continuous realm, blue, vast, and mysterious. But that's an illusion, a trick of perspective. The ocean isn't a single world. It's a series of worlds stacked one atop another, each with its own rules, its own inhabitants, its own impossible physics. To understand why the ocean floor is so alien, we need to understand this vertical architecture, this structure of zones that descends from the warmth and light of the surface into cold and crushing darkness. Let's start where life is abundant and familiar, the epipelagic zone, sometimes called the sunlight zone. This is the ocean from the surface down to about 200 meters, roughly 660 feet. Sunlight penetrates here, though it weakens rapidly as you descend. Near the surface, the water is bright, warm, filled with dancing rays of light that scatter and shimmer. Plants photosynthesize. Coral reefs bloom in riot of colors. Fish schools glitter like living silver. Dolphins leap. Whales sing. Sea turtles glide through forests of kelp. This is the ocean we know, the one captured in documentaries and postcards. It's vibrant, alive, recognizable. The temperature is pleasant, anywhere from cool to bathwater warm depending on latitude and season. The pressure is barely noticeable. A scuba diver can explore here with relative ease. But even in this familiar zone, something begins to change as you go deeper. The colors start to disappear. First red, the longest wavelength, is absorbed by the water. A red fish at 30 feet looks crimson and vibrant. At 60 feet, it appears dull, greyish. At 100 feet, it's effectively black. The ocean is an incredibly efficient filter, stripping away wavelengths one by one until only the blue-green spectrum remains. By the time you reach the bottom of the epipelagic zone, at 200 meters, the light is dim and monochromatic, a ghostly twilight filtering down from above. The temperature has dropped noticeably, and the pressure is now about 20 times what it is at the surface. 20 atmospheres. That's enough to compress air in your lungs, to make scuba diving impossible without specialized equipment, to remind you that you're entering an environment fundamentally hostile to human life. But this is only the beginning. Descend past 200 meters, and you enter the mesopelagic zone, often called the twilight zone. This layer extends from 200 meters down to about 1,000 meters, roughly 3,300 feet. Here, the last faint traces of sunlight penetrate, but it's too dim for photosynthesis. Plants can't grow. Coral reefs don't exist. The energy that sustains life here has to come from above, from the slow rain of organic material, dead plankton, fecal pellets, the bodies of fish drifting down from the sunlit waters overhead. This is where things start to get strange. In the mesopelagic zone, many creatures are bioluminescent. They produce their own light. It's not decorative, it's functional. In this dim twilight, light becomes a tool, a weapon, a language. Fish use photophores, light-producing organs, to camouflage themselves through counter-illumination, matching the faint glow from above to avoid casting a silhouette. Others use light to attract prey, luring curious animals close enough to strike. Still others flash and sparkle to confuse predators or to signal to potential mates. The animals here often look unsettling, even to scientists accustomed to studying marine life. Hatchetfish have bodies flattened like silver coins, with enormous upward-gazing eyes adapted to detect the faintest shadows above. Lanternfish, among the most abundant vertebrates on the planet, sport rows of glowing photophores along their bellies and sides, living constellations drifting through the twilight. Viperfish patrol, with mouths full of needle-like teeth too long to close, their jaws designed to impale rather than bite. Dragonfish possess hinged skulls that allow them to open their mouths impossibly wide, swallowing prey larger than themselves in a single gulp. The pressure here is intense, between 20 and 100 atmospheres. Most of the animals have bodies adapted to withstand it, but they're fragile in other ways. Bring them to the surface too quickly, and the rapid decrease in pressure can kill them, their swim bladders rupturing, their tissues failing. They're specialized for this narrow band of existence, evolved to thrive in conditions that would be instantly lethal to a surface-dwelling creature. And we're only halfway down. Keep descending, past the last whispers of sunlight, and you enter the bathypelagic zone, the midnight zone. This layer stretches from 1,000 meters to 4,000 meters, roughly 3,300 feet to 13,000 feet deep. Here, darkness is absolute, eternal. No trace of sunlight has ever reached this depth, not since the ocean first formed billions of years ago. The temperature hovers just above freezing, typically between 2 and 4 degrees Celsius. The pressure ranges from 100 to 400 atmospheres. To put that in perspective, at 4,000 meters, the pressure is roughly 400 times what you experience standing on the beach. Every square inch of your body would be subjected to nearly 6,000 pounds of force. It's crushing, relentless, inescapable, and yet life persists. The creatures of the bathypelagic zone are among the most bizarre on Earth. The anglerfish, icon of deep-sea weirdness, hunts here. The female carries a bioluminescent lure dangling from a modified spine on her head, a glowing bait that draws prey close enough to strike. The males of some species are tiny, parasitic things that fuse to the female's body, becoming little more than permanently attached sperm factories. Gulper eels drift through the darkness with mouths like enormous nets, capable of swallowing prey many times their size. Vampire squid, despite their name, are gentle creatures, feeding on marine snow, the constant drift of organic particles from above. They have the largest eyes relative to body size of any animal, huge globes that capture every photon of bioluminescent light. Everything here is an exercise in energy conservation. Food is scarce in the bathypelagic zone. There's no photosynthesis, no primary production, just the slow trickle of nutrients from above. Most deep-sea fish have slow metabolisms, reduced skeletal structures, minimal musculature. They don't chase prey. They wait, hanging motionless in the water column, conserving every calorie until an opportunity presents itself. Many are dark, of course, black or deep red, colors that absorb light and render them invisible in the blackness. Some have ultra-black skin, surfaces so perfectly absorbent they capture 99.7% of any light that touches them. It's the biological equivalent of stealth technology, making them vanish even when illuminated by the bioluminescence of other creatures. But we're still not at the bottom. Descend further, past 4,000 meters, and you enter the abyssopelagic zone, the abyssal zone. This layer extends from 4,000 meters to about 6,000 meters, roughly 13,000 to 20,000 feet. The pressure here exceeds 400 atmospheres. The temperature is a frigid 0 to 3 degrees Celsius. The darkness is perfect, unbroken except for the occasional spark of bioluminescence. This is where the ocean floor begins to appear beneath you, not as a smooth plain, but as a complex, varied landscape of hills and valleys, ridges and trenches. The creatures here are sparse, scattered across the vast dark plains. Many are scavengers, feeding on the occasional carcass that sinks from above a dead whale, a large fish. These whale falls become temporary oases of life, attracting swarms of scavengers and specialists that can feast for years on a single body. The sediment here is ancient and undisturbed, a blanket of fine particles that have been drifting down for thousands, sometimes millions of years. In some places, it's dozens of meters thick. Tracks and trails in this sediment reveal the passage of creatures we've rarely seen: sea cucumbers, brittle stars, strange shrimp-like creatures that plow through the ooze searching for organic matter. And still, there's one more zone below. At depths greater than 6,000 meters, about 20,000 feet, you enter the hadopelagic zone, named after Hades, the Greek underworld. These are the ocean trenches, the deepest parts of the planet, where the ocean floor plunges into great gashes in the Earth's crust. The Mariana Trench, the Tonga Trench, the Philippine Trench. These are realms of almost incomprehensible extremity. The pressure in the Hadal zone exceeds 600 atmospheres, rising to more than 1,000 atmospheres at the very deepest points. At the bottom of the Challenger Deep, the pressure is roughly 1,086 times atmospheric pressure at sea level. That's about 16,000 pounds per square inch. Put another way, it's like having a large elephant standing on every square inch of your body. The temperature is near freezing, the darkness is absolute, and the environment is, by any reasonable measure, utterly lethal. Yet even here, life exists. Snailfish have been observed at depths exceeding 8,000 meters, deeper than any other fish. They have translucent, gelatinous bodies, no swim bladders, and cartilaginous skeletons that bend and flex under the pressure. Amphipods, small crustaceans, swarm over food sources in the Hadal zone, and some grow to enormous sizes, so-called supergiant amphipods as long as a human hand. At the very bottom of the Challenger Deep, filmmaker James Cameron, who descended there in 2012, observed microbial mats coating the sediment and small shrimp-like creatures moving through the ooze. Life, even at the very bottom of the world, refuses to yield. This descent through the ocean zones reveals something profound. The ocean isn't just a body of water, it's a gradient, a continuum of environments that become progressively more extreme, more alien, more hostile to life as we know it. And yet at every level, life adapts, survives, and even thrives. By the time you reach the ocean floor, you're in an environment as different from the surface as the surface of Mars. The pressure, the cold, the darkness, these aren't minor inconveniences. They're fundamental alterations to the nature of existence. The physics are different. The chemistry is different. The very strategies life uses to persist are unlike anything we see on land or in the sunlit waters above. And it's here, at the bottom, in the deepest and darkest places, that we find some of the most astonishing discoveries in the history of science. Places where life doesn't just survive, it flourishes, powered not by sunlight, but by the heat and chemicals of the Earth itself. Hydrothermal vents, chimneys of creation. In 1977, a group of scientists aboard the research submersible Alvin were exploring the Galapagos Rift, a volcanic ridge on the Pacific Ocean floor, about 2,500 meters beneath the surface. They weren't expecting much. The deep sea was thought to be a barren, desolate place, cold, dark, and nearly lifeless, sustained only by the thin rain of nutrients drifting down from the sunlit surface far above. But as Alvin descended, its instruments began picking up strange temperature spikes. The water, which should have been uniformly near freezing, suddenly registered warmer readings, much warmer. Then, in the beam of Alvin's lights, the crew saw something that would change biology forever. Rising from the seafloor were towering structures, chimneys of rock and mineral, some as tall as buildings. From their tops and sides poured plumes of dark, superheated water, billowing into the surrounding sea like smoke from factory stacks. The water was hot, scorching hot, in some cases exceeding 400 degrees Celsius, well above the boiling point at sea level. Only the immense pressure at these depths kept it from vaporizing, and surrounding these vents, in defiance of every expectation, was life. Not sparse life, not a few struggling survivors, but abundant, dense clusters of giant tube worms, their feathery red plumes waving in the current, fields of enormous clams, some as big as dinner plates, mats of white bacteria coating the rocks, crabs, shrimp, fish, all congregating around the vents like desert creatures gathered at an oasis. This was the discovery of hydrothermal vents, and it shattered fundamental assumptions about where and how life could exist. To understand why these vents are so extraordinary, we need to understand what they are and how they form. Hydrothermal vents occur at sites of intense geological activity, typically along mid-ocean ridges, underwater mountain ranges, where tectonic plates are pulling apart. As the plates separate, magma from Earth's mantle wells up to fill the gap, creating new oceanic crust. This is one of the most dynamic geological processes on the planet, and it's happening right now, beneath thousands of meters of water, hidden from view. Seawater seeps down into cracks and fissures in this newly formed crust, penetrating deep into the rock. As it descends, it comes into contact with magma or rocks heated by proximity to the mantle. The water is heated to extreme temperatures, often 350 to 400 degrees Celsius or higher. This superheated water becomes highly reactive, dissolving minerals from the surrounding rock, sulfur, iron, copper, zinc, and a host of other compounds. The heated, mineral-rich water is buoyant. It's less dense than the cold seawater around it, so it rises back toward the seafloor, driven by convection. When it emerges from the vent, it looks like smoke, a dark plume billowing upward. This isn't smoke. Of course, it's water loaded with dissolved minerals. As the superheated fluid mixes with the near-freezing seawater, the minerals precipitate out, forming clouds of fine particles. If the water is particularly rich in iron sulfide and other dark minerals, the plume appears black. These are called black smokers. In some vents, the water is cooler and carries different minerals: calcium, barium, silicon. These precipitate as lighter colored compounds, creating white smokers. The minerals don't just cloud the water, they accumulate around the vent opening, building up over time into chimney-like structures. Some of these chimneys grow several meters tall, their walls riddled with channels and pores through which the vent fluid continues to seep. From a purely geological perspective, hydrothermal vents are fascinating. They're planetary plumbing, a system that cycles seawater through the Earth's crust, altering its chemistry, cooling the magma, and helping to regulate the composition of the ocean itself. Scientists estimate that the entire volume of Earth's oceans cycles through hydrothermal systems roughly every 10 million years. These vents are, in a sense, the planet's kidneys, filtering and transforming seawater on a global scale. But what made the 1977 discovery so revolutionary wasn't the geology, it was the biology. Before hydrothermal vents were discovered, scientists believed that all life on Earth ultimately depended on the sun. Photosynthesis, the process by which plants, algae, and certain bacteria convert sunlight into chemical energy, was thought to be the foundation of every ecosystem. Herbivores ate the plants, carnivores ate the herbivores, decomposers broke down the dead, but it all started with sunlight. The deep sea was considered a desert, sparsely populated by creatures that depended on the slow trickle of organic material from above. Dead plankton, fecal matter, the occasional whale carcass. Life existed in the deep, yes, but it was marginal, scraping by on leftovers from the sunlit world. Hydrothermal vents proved that assumption wrong. The life clustered around these vents doesn't rely on sunlight. It relies on chemistry. This is chemosynthesis, the process by which organisms harness energy not from light, but from chemical reactions. And the key players are microbes, bacteria, and archaea that thrive in the extreme conditions around the vents. These microbes are remarkable. They live in water that would cook most organisms instantly. They tolerate crushing pressure, toxic levels of heavy metals, and complete darkness. And they've evolved to use the chemicals spewing from the vents, particularly hydrogen sulfide, as an energy source. Hydrogen sulfide is lethal to most life. It's the compound that gives rotten eggs their stench, and in high concentrations, it's deadly even to humans, shutting down cellular respiration. But for the chemosynthetic bacteria at hydrothermal vents, hydrogen sulfide is fuel. They oxidize it, stripping away electrons and using the energy released to convert carbon dioxide into organic molecules, sugars, lipids, proteins. They're building the molecular machinery of life from the raw chemicals of the Earth itself. These bacteria form the base of the vent ecosystem. They coat the rocks in thick, white mats. They live in the water column, drifting in the plumes. And crucially, they form symbiotic relationships with the larger animals that make the vents so visually striking. Take the giant tube worms, Riftia pachyptela, as they're formally known. These creatures can grow up to 2 meters long, their bodies anchored in tubes they secrete and attach to the rocks. They have no mouths, no digestive systems, no means of eating in the traditional sense. Instead, their bodies contain a specialized organ called the trophosome, filled with billions of chemosynthetic bacteria. The worm absorbs hydrogen sulfide from the vent water, along with oxygen and carbon dioxide, and transports these chemicals to the bacteria in its trophosome. The bacteria perform chemosynthesis, producing organic compounds, and the worm absorbs these nutrients directly. It's a perfect partnership. The worm provides the bacteria with raw materials and a stable environment. The bacteria provide the worm with all the food it needs. Together, they thrive in a place that should be lifeless. Giant clams at the vents, species like Calyptogena magnifica, have a similar arrangement. Their gills house chemosynthetic bacteria. The clams absorb sulfide from the water, pass it to the bacteria, and receive nutrition in return. The same strategy appears in mussels, snails, and a variety of other vent species. Symbiosis, it turns out, is the key to life in these extreme environments. Not every creature at the vents is a symbiotic specialist. Some are predators or scavengers, taking advantage of the abundance created by chemosynthesis. Crabs pick through the bacterial mats, feeding on the microbes and detritus. Fish hover nearby, snapping up smaller invertebrates. Shrimp swarm over the vent chimneys, some so densely packed they form living blankets. Certain species of vent shrimp have developed one of the strangest adaptations in the animal kingdom: light-sensing organs on their backs, crude eyes that can detect the faint infrared glow of the superheated vent water. They use this to navigate, staying close to the life-giving heat without getting cooked. The discovery of hydrothermal vent ecosystems forced scientists to rethink the possibilities for life, not just on Earth, but throughout the universe. If life can thrive at the bottom of the ocean, powered not by sunlight but by the heat and chemistry of the planet itself, then life could potentially exist in all sorts of places we'd previously ruled out. Jupiter's moon Europa, for example, is covered by a thick shell of ice, but beneath that ice is a vast liquid ocean. The tidal forces from Jupiter's gravity likely generate heat in Europa's core, and that heat could drive hydrothermal systems on the ocean floor. If so, Europa might harbor chemosynthetic life, ecosystems that have never seen a ray of sunlight. The same logic applies to Enceladus, one of Saturn's moons, which also has a subsurface ocean and active hydrothermal vents. Scientists have detected complex organic molecules in plumes of water vapor ejected from Enceladus's south pole. These molecules could be the byproducts of life chemosynthetic microbes clinging to vent chimneys in a dark alien sea. Back on Earth, hydrothermal vents aren't just biological marvels, they're windows into the planet's deep history. Some scientists believe that life itself may have originated at hydrothermal vents. The early Earth, more than 3.5 billion years ago, was a violent place. Meteorite impacts, volcanic eruptions, a toxic atmosphere, but hydrothermal vents would have existed even then, providing stable sources of energy and raw materials. The warm, mineral-rich fluids at vents create chemical gradients differences in concentration, temperature, and pH that can drive chemical reactions. In the right conditions, simple organic molecules can form and link together, building the precursors to life: amino acids, nucleotides, lipids. The porous rocks around vents can act as natural catalysts, speeding up these reactions and concentrating the products. It's a compelling hypothesis. Life didn't begin in a shallow sunlit pond, as some early theories suggested, but in the deep darkness, heated by the Earth's own internal fires, shielded from the chaos of the surface. If true, then every living thing on Earth, every plant, animal, fungus, and microbe is descended from organisms that once called hydrothermal vents home. Even today, the vents continue to fascinate and surprise. New vent sites are discovered regularly, each one hosting unique assemblages of life. Some vents are rich in methane instead of hydrogen sulfide, and they support communities built around methanotrophs, microbes that consume methane as fuel. Other vents are low-temperature, diffuse systems, where warm water seeps gently from the seafloor rather than jetting out in dramatic plumes. These diffuse flow vents lack the towering chimneys of black smokers, but they support diverse ecosystems nonetheless: fields of anemones, groves of sponges, entire communities adapted to the subtle warmth. Hydrothermal vents are also ephemeral. Volcanic activity can shut off a vent suddenly, cutting off the flow of life-sustaining chemicals. When that happens, the organisms die and the site goes dark. Conversely, new vents can appear without warning as tectonic activity opens fresh cracks in the seafloor. The creatures that live at these vents have evolved strategies to cope with this unpredictability. Many species have planktonic larvae that drift with the currents, searching for new vent sites. When they detect the chemical signature of a vent, the sulfide, the warmth, they settle and begin to build a new community. This raises a fascinating question. How do vent organisms find new vents across the vast, dark expanses of the deep ocean. Some scientists propose a stepping stone model. Larvae hop from one vent to the next, traveling relatively short distances but gradually spreading across the ocean floor. Others suggest that certain vents act as hubs, sending out larvae that can drift for weeks or months before finding a new home. What's clear is that vent species are remarkably resilient. Despite the transience of their habitat, they persist, adapting and recolonizing, driven by the twin forces of chemistry and evolution. Standing back and looking at hydrothermal vents as a whole, what strikes you is how utterly alien they are, and yet how deeply connected to Earth. They're powered by geology, by the movement of tectonic plates and the heat of the mantle. They're sculpted by chemistry, by the reactions between seawater and rock, and they're animated by biology, by microbes that turn poison into food, and by animals that have found ways to thrive in one of the most extreme environments imaginable. If you could visit a hydrothermal vent, descending in a submersible through the darkness, you'd experience something like visiting another planet. The landscape is jagged and barren, dominated by black volcanic rock. The water is crystal clear but utterly black beyond the reach of your lights. Then, as you approach the vent, you'd see the plume, the dark column rising like smoke. You'd see the chimneys, crusted with minerals, glowing faintly with heat. And you'd see the life dense, bizarre, beautiful, clustered around the source of energy like moths around a flame. It's a reminder that Earth is not one world but many, layered one atop another, each with its own rules and possibilities. The vents are proof that life is endlessly resourceful, that it can exploit energy wherever it exists, whether from the sun or the furnace of the planet's core. And as we'll see next, the strategies life uses to survive at these vents, strategies built on chemistry, symbiosis, and adaptation, are some of the most remarkable in all of biology. Chemosynthesis, life without sunlight. For most of human history, sunlight has been synonymous with life. We plant crops in fields where the sun shines brightest. We build our homes to face the warmth of the morning light. Philosophically, culturally, even spiritually, light and life are intertwined. Darkness, by contrast, is absence, the absence of energy, the absence of growth, the absence of possibility. But the discovery of chemosynthesis turned that assumption on its head. Life, it turns out, doesn't need sunlight. It needs energy, and energy can come from sources that have nothing to do with the sun. Chemosynthesis is the process by which certain organisms derive energy from chemical reactions rather than from light, while photosynthesis uses sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars. Chemosynthesis uses chemicals, often inorganic, often toxic, to achieve the same end. The inputs are different, but the outcome is the same: the production of organic molecules that can fuel growth, reproduction, and the maintenance of life. Let's start with the basics. All living organisms need energy to survive. Energy powers everything from the contraction of muscles to the synthesis of DNA, from the beating of a heart to the firing of neurons in a brain. For most organisms, that energy ultimately comes from the sun. Plants capture solar energy through photosynthesis, storing it in the bonds of glucose molecules. Animals eat plants or eat other animals that ate plants and extract that stored energy through cellular respiration. But photosynthesis has a fundamental requirement: light. Remove the light, and photosynthesis stops. No plants grow in the deepest parts of the ocean. No trees bloom in the midnight zone. The sun's energy, filtered through thousands of meters of water, simply doesn't reach. So how does life survive? How does anything grow, reproduce, or thrive in perpetual darkness? The answer, discovered at hydrothermal vents, is chemosynthesis, and the key players, as we've mentioned, are microbes, specifically bacteria and archaea, with the biochemical machinery to harvest energy from chemicals rather than from photons. The specific chemistry of chemosynthesis varies depending on the organism and the environment, but the most common pathway at hydrothermal vents involves hydrogen sulfide. This compound H2S emerges from the vents in high concentrations, dissolved in the superheated water. For most life, hydrogen sulfide is a poison. It binds to the same enzymes that allow cells to use oxygen, effectively shutting down respiration. But for chemosynthetic bacteria, hydrogen sulfide is an opportunity. These bacteria oxidize hydrogen sulfide, removing electrons and passing them through a chain of molecular reactions similar to the process that occurs in the mitochondria of your cells when you breathe. As the electrons move through this chain, energy is released. The bacteria use this energy to synthesize ATP adenosine triphosphate, the universal currency of cellular energy. With ATP in hand, the bacteria can perform the second critical step, carbon fixation. They take carbon dioxide from the surrounding water and convert it into organic molecules, primarily sugars. This is analogous to what plants do during photosynthesis, but instead of using light energy to drive the reaction, the bacteria use the chemical energy harvested from sulfide oxidation. The simplified chemical equation for sulfide-based chemosynthesis looks like this: 6CO2 plus 12H2S plus energy C, 6H12O6 plus 6H2O plus 12S. In plain English, carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, powered by chemical energy, produce glucose, water, and elemental sulfur. This is elegant and efficient, and it's entirely independent of the sun. But hydrogen sulfide isn't the only chemical that can fuel chemosynthesis. Other vent bacteria use methane, oxidizing it to produce energy. Still others use hydrogen, gas, iron compounds, or ammonia. The key isn't the specific chemical, it's the principle. If a compound can be oxidized or reduced, if electrons can be stripped away or added, then energy can be extracted. And where there's energy, life finds a way. At hydrothermal vents, chemosynthetic bacteria are everywhere. They coat the rocks in thick white mats. They live in the plumes of vent water, drifting like microscopic snow. They colonize the surfaces of vent chimneys, surviving in water so hot it would scald human skin in seconds. And as we've seen, they form symbiotic partnerships with larger animals, living inside their tissues and providing them with nutrients. This last point is worth emphasizing because it reveals just how deeply chemosynthesis has shaped vent ecosystems. The giant tube worms, the clams, the mussels, these animals are essentially walking, swimming, or sessile containers for chemosynthetic bacteria. They've evolved specialized organs to house the microbes, mechanisms to deliver the chemicals the microbes need, and biochemical adaptations to tolerate compounds that would otherwise be lethal. Take the giant tube worm, Riftia pachyptala, as an example. Its bright red plume, the feathery structure that waves in the current, is packed with hemoglobin, the same protein that carries oxygen in your blood. But Riftia's hemoglobin is different. It has a special binding site for hydrogen sulfide, allowing the worm to absorb sulfide from the water and transport it, along with oxygen and carbon dioxide, to the bacteria in its trophosome. This is a risky business. Hydrogen sulfide and oxygen, when combined, react explosively. The worm has to keep them separated until they reach the bacteria, where the microbes carefully oxidize the sulfide in a controlled manner. It's biochemical wizardry, evolution's solution to a problem no land animal has ever faced. The chemosynthetic bacteria inside the worm convert sulfide and CO2 into organic compounds, fats, sugars, amino acids, which the worm then absorbs through the walls of its trophosome. This is the worm's only source of nutrition. It doesn't eat, doesn't hunt, doesn't even have a mouth. It's entirely dependent on its bacterial symbionts. Similar arrangements occur in vent clams and mussels. Their gills, normally used for filter feeding, are filled with chemosynthetic bacteria. The animals irrigate their gills with vent water, delivering sulfide to the microbes, and in return, they receive a steady supply of nutrients. It's a partnership built on mutual dependence, a co-evolution so intimate that neither party can survive without the other. But chemosynthesis at vents isn't limited to sulfide oxidation. At some sites, particularly those associated with serpentinization, a process where seawater reacts with certain types of rock to produce hydrogen gas, methane becomes the dominant energy source. Methanotrophs, bacteria that consume methane, form the base of these ecosystems. They oxidize methane, producing energy and organic matter, and supporting communities of mussels, crabs, and other animals adapted to methane-rich environments. At cold seeps areas where methane and other hydrocarbons seep from the seafloor, often far from tectonic activity, chemosynthesis also reigns. These seeps lack the dramatic plumes and high temperatures of hydrothermal vents, but they support ecosystems every bit as complex. Clams burrow into the sediment, their gills hosting methanotrophs. Bacterial mats sprawl across the seabed, glowing faintly with metabolic activity. Tube worms, similar to those at hot vents, anchor themselves in the sediment, drawing on the seeping chemicals below. Chemosynthesis, then, isn't just a curiosity found at a few isolated vents. It's a widespread, fundamental process that supports life across vast stretches of the deep ocean. It occurs at mid-ocean ridges, at cold seeps, at mud volcanoes, and even in the sediment of the abyssal plains. Anywhere chemicals accumulate anywhere, geochemical processes create gradients that can be exploited, chemosynthetic microbes are likely present. And the implications extend beyond the ocean floor. Chemosynthesis demonstrates that life doesn't require sunlight. It only requires a source of chemical energy and the right environmental conditions. This expands the potential for life far beyond the narrow, habitable zone around stars where liquid water and sunlight coexist. Consider the subsurface oceans of Europa, Enceladus, or other icy moons. These worlds are too far from the sun for photosynthesis to be viable. Their surfaces are frozen, locked in perpetual darkness. But deep below, liquid water could exist, kept warm by tidal heating or radioactive decay. If hydrothermal systems exist on the floors of these alien seas, then chemosynthesis could sustain ecosystems entirely independent of the sun, ecosystems that have never known light, yet teem with life. On Earth, chemosynthesis also plays a role in understanding the origins of life. The early Earth had no oxygen in its atmosphere, no ozone layer to shield the surface from ultraviolet radiation. The sun's light was harsh, the land barren and exposed, but the ocean floor, especially around hydrothermal vents, would have been shielded, stable, and rich with chemical energy. Some scientists propose that the first living cells were chemosynthetic primitive microbes that harnessed energy from chemicals rather than light. These early organisms might have lived in the mineral-rich, porous structures around vents, using the natural chemical gradients to drive their metabolism. Over time, they evolved the machinery for more complex processes, including photosynthesis, but the fundamental mechanism, harvesting energy from chemistry, came first. There's something profoundly humbling about chemosynthesis. It reminds us that the sun, for all its brilliance, is just one source of energy among many. Life is opportunistic, adaptable, relentless. Give it a chemical gradient, a temperature differential, a pocket of methane or hydrogen, and it will find a way. The creatures at hydrothermal vents, fed by chemosynthesis, living in darkness and pressure, are proof that alien life doesn't require an alien world. It's here, now, thriving in environments we can barely comprehend, powered by processes that seem as strange as anything science fiction could imagine. And as we'll explore next, the adaptations these creatures have evolved, the bizarre, beautiful, and often unsettling ways they've reshaped their bodies to survive, are a testament to the creativity of evolution when faced with the impossible. Extreme adaptations, creatures of the deep. Let's linger now in the darkness. Let's meet the inhabitants of this alien world, the creatures that call the deep ocean home, that have evolved over millions of years to thrive in conditions that would obliterate any surface-dwelling organism within seconds. These aren't just fish that happen to live in deep water. They're evolutionary masterpieces, sculpted by pressure, darkness, and scarcity into forms so strange they challenge our understanding of what an animal can be. We'll start with one of the most fundamental challenges of deep-sea life: pressure. At the surface, atmospheric pressure is 1 bar, or about 14.7 pounds per square inch. It's the weight of the entire column of air above you, pressing down evenly on your body. You don't notice it because your body's internal pressure matches it. Descend into the ocean, and the pressure increases rapidly. For every 10 meters of depth, the pressure increases by about 1 bar. At 1,000 meters, the top of the bathypelagic zone, the pressure is roughly 100 bars. At 4,000 meters, it's 400 bars. And at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, it's more than 1,000 bars over 16,000 pounds per square inch. To put that in perspective, if you took an empty, sealed aluminum can to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the pressure would crush it into a tiny, warped lump. A styrofoam cup would compress to the size of a thimble. Even advanced military submarines can only descend to about 600 meters before the pressure becomes dangerous. Specialized research submersibles, built from titanium and thick acrylic, can reach the deepest trenches, but they're marvels of engineering, designed to withstand forces that would shatter steel. Yet deep-sea animals live at these depths without armor, without thick shells, without any obvious protection. How? The answer lies in biology, not engineering. Deep-sea creatures don't fight the pressure, they match it. Their bodies are mostly water, and water is nearly incompressible. The pressure outside their bodies is balanced by the pressure inside, so there's no net force trying to crush them. Their cells, their tissues, their fluids are all at the same pressure as the surrounding water. This is why many deep-sea fish look soft, even fragile. They lack swim bladders, those gas-filled organs that help shallow-water fish control their buoyancy. Gas compresses dramatically under pressure, so a swim bladder would collapse, or worse, rupture. Instead, deep-sea fish use other methods to stay neutrally buoyant. Some have high concentrations of lipids and oils in their tissues, which are less dense than water and provide lift. Others have reduced skeletal structures, with lightweight bones and less mineralization, making them less dense overall. Some deep-sea fish have gelatinous, watery bodies, almost translucent, that look more like jellyfish than fish. These bodies are structurally weak, but they don't need to be strong. There are no waves, no currents strong enough to batter them. They drift more than swim, conserving energy in an environment where every calorie is precious. But pressure isn't the only challenge. There's also the cold. The deep ocean is cold, typically between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius, just above the freezing point of seawater. At these temperatures, most biochemical reactions slow to a crawl. Enzymes, the proteins that catalyze metabolic reactions, lose efficiency. Membranes stiffen, making it harder for cells to function. Deep-sea organisms have adapted in several ways. Many have enzymes that are specifically evolved to work efficiently at low temperatures. These cold-adapted enzymes have flexible structures that remain active even as temperatures drop. Some deep-sea fish have antifreeze proteins in their blood, preventing ice crystals from forming and damaging their tissues. Others have slow metabolisms, matching the low-energy environment they inhabit. They move slowly, grow slowly, reproduce slowly. Life in the deep is conducted at a glacial pace, with organisms living for decades or even centuries, taking years to reach maturity. Then there's the darkness. In an environment without light, vision might seem useless, and indeed, some deep-sea creatures are completely blind. But many have eyes, often enormous eyes, far larger than you'd expect for their body size. Take the giant squid, one of the deep ocean's most famous residents. Its eyes are the largest of any animal, each one the size of a dinner plate, nearly 30 centimeters in diameter. Why so large? Because in the deep sea, light is extraordinarily scarce. Most of the light that exists comes from bioluminescence, the living light produced by other organisms. That light is faint, often just brief flashes or faint glows. Large eyes capture more photons, making it possible to detect even the faintest sources of light. The giant squid's eyes are so sensitive They can see the silhouette of a whale passing overhead, backlit by the dim bioluminescence of jellyfish and plankton in the water above. It's a visual system adapted for a world where light is a rare and precious commodity. Other deep-sea fish have tubular eyes, literally tube-shaped, pointing upward, designed to maximize light-gathering ability in one direction. The barrel-eye fish, or Macropina microstoma, is a striking example. Its eyes are housed in a transparent, fluid-filled dome on top of its head, and they point straight up. The fish hovers motionless in the water column, watching for the silhouettes of prey against the faint light above. When it spots something, it can rotate its eyes forward and move in for the attack. Some deep-sea creatures have taken a different approach. They've become invisible. In a world without light, you'd think camouflage would be pointless. But bioluminescence is common enough that many animals have evolved ways to hide from it. Some are transparent, their bodies so clear that light passes through them without scattering. You can see right through them, their internal organs barely visible. The glass squid is a beautiful example. Its body is almost entirely transparent, with only its digestive gland remaining opaque. Others are ultra-black, covered in skin that absorbs 99.7% of any light that hits them. These animals are blacker than the darkest black paint, their surfaces covered in microscopic structures that trap light and prevent it from reflecting. When illuminated by a predator's bioluminescent lure or a submersible's lights, they vanish, absorbing the light so completely that they remain invisible. And then there's bioluminescence itself, one of the most widespread and diverse adaptations in the deep sea. Bioluminescence is the production of light by living organisms, and in the deep ocean, it's everywhere. Estimates suggest that 75 to 90% of deep-sea animals are capable of producing light. This isn't coincidence, it's necessity. In the absence of sunlight, organisms have evolved to create their own light, and they use it for a staggering variety of purposes. Some use bioluminescence to hunt. The anglerfish is the iconic example. The female carries a fleshy lure, called an esker, that dangles from a modified dorsal spine. Inside the esker are colonies of bioluminescent bacteria, photobacterium, typically that glow steadily. The anglerfish dangles the lure in front of its mouth, wiggling it like a fishing lure. Prey animals, drawn to the light, swim close and are snapped up by the anglerfish's enormous jaws. The stoplight loosejaw, Malacosteus niger, has an even more remarkable adaptation. It produces red bioluminescence, a color almost never seen in the deep ocean. Most deep-sea creatures can only see blue or green light. Their eyes lack the pigments to detect red wavelengths. The loosejaw uses red light as a secret spotlight, illuminating prey without being detected. It's the biological equivalent of infrared night vision goggles. Other creatures use bioluminescence for defense. When attacked, the vampire squid releases a cloud of bioluminescent mucus, sticky, glowing particles that confuse and distract the predator while the squid escapes into the darkness. Some deep-sea shrimp squirt bioluminescent chemicals at attackers, creating a dazzling, disorienting display. Then there's counter-illumination, a form of camouflage. Many deep-sea fish have photophores, light-producing organs on their undersides. They adjust the brightness and color of these lights to match the faint glow filtering down from above. When a predator looks up from below, the fish's silhouette disappears, blending seamlessly with the background. It's an invisibility cloak made of light. Bioluminescence is also used for communication. Firefly squid, Wattersinia scintillans, have photophores scattered across their bodies. They flash in patterns, creating light shows that may serve as signals to potential mates or warnings to rivals. Lanternfish, some of the most abundant vertebrates in the ocean, have species-specific patterns of photophores, allowing them to recognize members of their own species in the darkness. Beyond light, deep-sea creatures have evolved bizarre feeding strategies because food in the deep is scarce and unpredictable. The gulper eel, Eurypharynx pelicanoides, has a mouth so large it seems disproportionate, like a pelican's pouch. It can expand to swallow prey much larger than the eel's own body. The eel drifts through the water with its mouth open, hoping to encounter something edible. Viperfish have teeth so long they can't close their mouths fully. Their fangs are hinged, designed to impale prey rather than bite. When a viperfish strikes, it drives its teeth through the victim like a set of needles, holding it in place while swallowing. The black swallower, Chiasmodon niger, can distend its stomach to grotesque proportions, allowing it to consume fish twice its own length. Its jaw is unhinged, its body stretches like a balloon. Sometimes it swallows prey so large it can't digest it quickly enough, and the decomposing fish produces gases that make the swallower buoyant, carrying it to the surface where it dies. Deep-sea predators are opportunists. In an environment where meals are few and far between, they can't afford to be choosy. If something swims too close, they strike, regardless of size or species. This leads to a strange kind of ecosystem, one where predation is infrequent but decisive, and where survival often depends as much on luck as on adaptation. Then there are the scavengers, creatures that wait for food to come to them. When a whale dies in the open ocean, its body sinks, drifting down through the water column until it reaches the seafloor. This is called a whale fall, and it's an event of enormous significance in the deep. The carcass is a treasure trove of nutrients, tons of flesh, blubber, and bone, a feast that can last for decades. Within hours, scavengers begin to arrive. Sleeper sharks, hagfish, and amphipods converge on the body, tearing off chunks of flesh. As the carcass is stripped, opportunistic species move in polychaete worms, crabs, and other invertebrates that feed on scraps and bacterial mats growing on the bones. Eventually, specialists take over. Bone-eating worms, osedacs, burrow into the whale's skeleton, using symbiotic bacteria to break down the lipids stored in the bones. These worms have no mouths or guts, they're entirely dependent on their bacterial partners. A single whale fall can support a community of organisms for 50 years or more, its bones gradually dissolving as life extracts the last traces of energy. What strikes you, looking at all these adaptations, is the sheer ingenuity. Evolution isn't conscious, isn't deliberate. It's a blind process of mutation and selection, trial and error across millions of years. But the result is stunning. Each creature is a solution to a problem, a set of trade-offs and compromises that allows life to persist in an environment that seems fundamentally hostile. The deep ocean doesn't just tolerate life, it's filled with it, shaped by it, sustained by it. From the crushing pressure to the freezing cold to the perpetual darkness, every challenge is met with adaptation, every barrier crossed. Life doesn't conquer the deep. It inhabits it, transforms it, becomes part of it. And, as we'll see, even in the very deepest places, the Hadal Trenches, where conditions are most extreme, life refuses to yield. The Hadal Zone, Earth's final frontier. If the deep ocean is alien, then the Hadal Zone is another world entirely. This is the realm of the ocean trenches, the deepest places on Earth, where the seafloor plunges into great gashes carved by tectonic forces. These trenches are rare, only about 2% of the ocean floor falls into the Hadal Zone, but they represent some of the most extreme environments on the planet. The Hadal Zone begins at 6,000 meters depth and extends down to the deepest known point, the Challenger, deep in the Mariana Trench, at nearly 11,000 meters. To put that in perspective, if you could somehow place Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on Earth, into the Mariana Trench, its peak would still be more than 2,000 meters underwater. The pressure in the Hadal Zone is almost unimaginable. At 11,000 meters, the pressure exceeds 1,100 bars, or 16,000 pounds per square inch. That's like having a fully loaded 747 jet balanced on your thumbnail. It's enough to compress the water itself slightly, making it denser and even less hospitable. The temperature is near freezing, hovering around 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. The darkness is absolute. No trace of sunlight has ever reached these depths. And the environment is oligotrophic, meaning nutrients are scarce. The slow rain of organic material from above the marine snow that sustains much of the deep sea is even sparser here, settling onto the Hadal plains like ash in a forgotten landscape. For decades, scientists believed the Hadal zone was essentially lifeless. The pressure alone seemed insurmountable. How could any organism, no matter how adapted, survive under such conditions? Early deep-sea expeditions recovered sediment samples from trenches and found little to nothing living in them. The Hadal zone, it seemed, was a true desert, a dead zone where Earth's biosphere finally gave up. But over the last few decades, as technology has improved, that assumption has been shattered. The Hadal zone is not lifeless. It's filled with life unique, bizarre, and remarkably abundant. The first hints came in 1960, when the bathyscaphe Trieste, piloted by Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh, descended to the bottom of the Challenger Deep. Peering through the tiny porthole, the crew reported seeing a flatfish, along with small shrimp-like creatures moving across the sediment. The observation was brief, the evidence unclear, but it was enough to suggest that life existed even at the very bottom of the world. Since then, dozens of expeditions have explored Hadal trenches using remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, landers, and deep-diving submersibles. And what they've found is astonishing. One of the most common residents of the Hadal zone is the amphipod, a small crustacean resembling a shrimp. In the shallow ocean, amphipods are typically a few millimeters to a centimeter long, but in the Hadal zone, they grow to enormous sizes, so-called supergiant amphipods, some reaching 30 centimeters in length. These creatures scuttle across the sediment, scavenging on whatever organic material drifts down from above. When bait is lowered into the trenches, swarms of amphipods converge on it within hours, tearing it apart with astonishing efficiency. Hadal snailfish, Pseudoliparus swiri, are another remarkable discovery. These fish have been observed at depths exceeding 8,000 meters, making them the deepest living fish ever recorded. They're small, translucent, almost ghostly in appearance, with gelatinous bodies and no scales. Their bones are thin and flexible, their muscles reduced. They drift slowly across the seafloor, feeding on amphipods and other small invertebrates. Snailfish have no swim bladders; those gas-filled organs would collapse instantly under the pressure. Instead, their bodies are filled with a watery, gelatinous tissue that keeps them neutrally buoyant. Their cells contain high concentrations of a compound called trimethylamine oxide, TMAO, which helps stabilize proteins under extreme pressure, preventing them from deforming and losing function. TMAO is crucial. Without it, the pressure in the Hadal zone would crush proteins into useless shapes, effectively destroying the biochemical machinery of life. With it, snailfish can thrive where other organisms fail, but even TMAO has limits. At depths beyond about 8,500 meters, the concentration of TMAO needed to stabilize proteins becomes so high that it interferes with other cellular processes. This may represent a fundamental depth limit for fish, a point beyond which the physics and chemistry of life simply can't work. Interestingly, invertebrates like amphipods don't face this same limit. Their bodies are structured differently, and they may be able to survive at even greater depths. Some scientists speculate that amphipods could inhabit the very deepest parts of the Hadal zone, all the way to the bottom. Beyond fish and amphipods, the Hadal zone hosts a variety of other organisms. Sea cucumbers crawl across the sediment, ingesting mud and extracting whatever organic matter it contains. Polychaete worms burrow through the sediment, their bodies adapted to the crushing pressure. Even microbial life is abundant, with bacteria and archaea thriving in the sediment, breaking down organic material and recycling nutrients. One of the most surprising discoveries is the diversity of Hadal trenches. Each trench is essentially an isolated island, separated from others by vast expanses of abyssal plain. The Mariana Trench, the Tonga Trench, the Philippine Trench, the Kermadec Trench, each has its own unique community of organisms, many found nowhere else. The isolation has driven speciation, much like islands drive the evolution of unique bird species. Scientists have also discovered that hadal trenches act as nutrient traps. While the open abyssal plains are oligotrophic, trenches funnel organic material down their steep slopes, concentrating it at the bottom. This creates pockets of relative abundance, oases in the desert, where life can gather and persist. But the hadal zone isn't just extreme in terms of pressure and depth, it's also geologically active. Many trenches are subduction zones, where one tectonic plate is being forced beneath another. This creates earthquakes, underwater landslides, and occasional volcanic eruptions. The seafloor here is unstable, constantly shifting, occasionally catastrophic, yet life persists. Animals in the hadal zone are adapted to survive disturbances, to recolonize after disasters, to endure. They're generalists, capable of feeding on a wide variety of food sources. They're resilient, bouncing back from events that would obliterate more specialized communities. There's something almost defiant about life in the hadal zone. It exists in a place that seems fundamentally opposed to existence, where every physical parameter is pushed to extremes, and yet it thrives, quietly, invisibly, in the deepest darkness, under the greatest pressure, in the coldest waters. Exploring the hadal zone remains extraordinarily difficult. Only a handful of crude submersibles are capable of reaching these depths. The Trieste, which made a single dive in 1960, the Deep-Sea Challenger, piloted by James Cameron in 2012, and the Limiting Factor, which has made multiple dives to various trenches. Each dive is a technological marvel, requiring years of planning, engineering, and testing. Even unmanned landers and ROVs face challenges. The pressure crushes electronics, corrodes seals, and limits the materials that can be used. Batteries drain quickly. Communication is impossible. Radio waves don't penetrate water, so submersibles are on their own once they descend. Yet with each expedition, we learn more. We discover new species, document new behaviors, map new terrain. The hadal zone, once thought to be empty, is slowly revealing itself as one of the most fascinating and complex environments on Earth. And it forces us to ask, if life can exist here, at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, under pressures that would obliterate steel, in darkness so complete it has never known light, where else might life exist? What other impossible places might harbor ecosystems we haven't even imagined? Bioluminescence, living light in the dark. We've touched on bioluminescence already, but it deserves a deeper exploration because it's not just an adaptation, it's a language, a tool, a form of art sculpted by evolution over hundreds of millions of years. Bioluminescence is the production and emission of light by living organisms. It's a chemical reaction, typically involving a molecule called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. When luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of luciferase, it produces light. The reaction is extraordinarily efficient. Nearly all the energy is converted into light, with almost no heat. Scientists call it cold light, and it's far more efficient than any light bulb or LED we've ever invented. On land, bioluminescence is rare. Fireflies are the most familiar example, flashing in summer meadows to attract mates. A few other organisms, certain fungi, some earthworms, a handful of insects can produce light, but it's the exception rather than the rule. In the ocean, it's the rule. An estimated 76% of all ocean animals are bioluminescent. In some regions of the deep sea, that number approaches 90%. Dive below 200 meters, and you enter a world where almost everything glows. Fish, squid, jellyfish, shrimp, worms, even bacteria. Why is bioluminescence so common in the ocean? The answer lies in the environment. On land, there are countless places to hide burrows, foliage, caves. But in the open ocean, especially in the deep, there are no hiding places. The water column is a vast, three-dimensional space where every organism is exposed, vulnerable. In such an environment, light becomes a critical tool. It's used for hunting, for defense, for communication, for camouflage. It's the ocean's primary currency, and nearly every species has found a way to spend it. Let's look at some of the ways bioluminescence is used. because the diversity is staggering. First, hunting. Many predators use bioluminescence to lure prey. The anglerfish, as we've mentioned, dangles a glowing lure in front of its mouth. But it's not alone. Viperfish have photophores inside their mouths, glowing lights that attract small fish and crustaceans. The prey swims toward the light and into the jaws waiting behind it. Other predators use bioluminescence as a searchlight. The dragonfish, Malacosteus niger, produces red light that most deep-sea creatures can't see. It uses this light to illuminate prey without alerting them, essentially hunting with an invisible flashlight. Second, defense. When threatened, many deep-sea creatures use light to confuse or distract predators. Certain squid release clouds of bioluminescent ink, creating a glowing decoy while they escape into the darkness. Deep-sea shrimp squirt bioluminescent chemicals at attackers, blinding them temporarily. Then there's the bioluminescent burglar alarm, one of the most ingenious defensive strategies in the ocean. If a jellyfish or salp is caught by a predator, it starts flashing brightly, creating a beacon visible from hundreds of meters away. The flashing attracts larger predators, which attack the original attacker, giving the prey a chance to escape. It's the deep-sea equivalent of a panic button: attract something bigger, let it deal with your problem. Third, camouflage. As we discussed earlier, counter-illumination is widespread. Fish with photophores on their undersides can match the faint, downwelling light from above, erasing their silhouettes and making them nearly invisible to predators hunting from below. Some species can adjust the intensity and wavelength of their light in real time, matching changes in the ambient light as precisely as a chameleon matches colors. Fourth, communication. Bioluminescence is used to send signals to attract mates, to warn rivals, to coordinate group behavior. Firefly squid gather in huge schools and synchronize their flashing, creating mesmerizing displays of blue light. These displays may help the squid recognize members of their own species, or they may serve as a form of courtship, advertising fitness to potential mates. Lanternfish have species-specific patterns of photophores, like unique signatures written in light. This allows individuals to identify members of their own species in the darkness, a crucial ability in a world where visual cues are limited. Fifth, symbiosis. Many deep-sea animals don't produce their own light. They house bioluminescent bacteria in specialized organs. The bacteria glow steadily, providing the host with a reliable light source. In return, the host provides the bacteria with nutrients and a safe environment. The Hawaiian bobtail squid, Euprimnoscalops, has a light organ filled with Vibrio fischeri, a bioluminescent bacterium. The squid hunts at night, using the bacterial light for counter-illumination to avoid casting a shadow. During the day, it buries itself in the sand, and the bacteria go dormant. It's a partnership refined over millions of years. The chemistry of bioluminescence is also fascinating. Different organisms use different forms of luciferin, each with slightly different properties. This means the color of bioluminescence varies. Most deep-sea organisms produce blue or blue-green light, which travels farthest in water, but some produce green, yellow, or even red light. The stoplight, loose jaw's red bioluminescence, is particularly remarkable. Red light is absorbed very quickly by seawater, so it doesn't travel far. But most deep-sea animals can't see red wavelengths; they lack the visual pigments. The loose jaw, however, has a special adaptation. Its eyes contain chlorophyll derivatives, pigments that allow it to detect red light, so it can see in a spectrum invisible to others, giving it a huge predatory advantage. Another curious aspect of bioluminescence is its distribution. It's not just deep-sea creatures that glow. Many surface-dwelling plankton are bioluminescent, creating the phenomenon of sea sparkle, the glowing trails left by boats at night, or the glowing waves that sometimes light up beaches. These plankton use bioluminescence as a defense, flashing when disturbed to attract predators that will eat whatever disturbed them. Certain species of dinoflagellates create massive blooms that light up entire bays. The bioluminescent bay in Vieques, Puerto Rico, is famous for this paddle, a kayak through the water at night and every stroke leaves a glowing trail as millions of dinoflagellates flash in unison. Bioluminescence has also inspired human technology. Scientists have used luciferase genes as markers in biological research, tagging cells with bioluminescence to track their activity. Glow-in-the-dark proteins from jellyfish have become essential tools in genetics and medicine, and engineers are studying bioluminescent organisms to develop more efficient lighting systems, hoping to mimic nature's nearly perfect energy conversion. But beyond the science, there's something almost magical about bioluminescence. It's light in the darkest places. It's life making itself visible, declaring its presence even in environments where seeing seems impossible. Imagine being in a submersible, descending into the midnight zone. Outside, the water is pitch black. Your lights are off, conserving power. Slowly, your eyes adjust, and you begin to see them: faint sparks, drifting glows, sudden flashes. A jellyfish pulses with blue light. A dragonfish glides past, its photophores glowing like stars. A cloud of bioluminescent plankton swirls in the current, a galaxy of living light. It's one of the most beautiful sights in nature, and one of the most alien, because this isn't reflected sunlight. This is light created by life, willed into existence by chemistry, evolution's answer to darkness. And it reminds us that the deep ocean, for all its hostility, is not empty. It's filled with light, with movement, with life that glows and flickers and dances through the dark. Underwater mountains and canyons, hidden landscapes. If you could drain the oceans, if you could remove every drop of water and stand on the exposed seafloor, you'd find yourself in a landscape as dramatic and varied as any on the surface. Towering mountain ranges, deep canyons, vast plains, volcanic peaks, sheer cliffs all hidden beneath the waves, unseen by the vast majority of humanity. The ocean floor is not flat, it's not featureless, it's a dynamic, complex terrain, shaped by the same geological forces that build mountains and carve valleys on land. And in many ways, it's more dramatic, because tectonic activity at the seafloor operates on a scale and intensity that has no terrestrial equivalent. Start with the mid-ocean ridges, the longest mountain range on Earth. These ridges snake across the ocean floor for more than 65,000 kilometers, wrapping around the globe like the seams on a baseball. They're formed at divergent plate boundaries, where tectonic plates are pulling apart and magma wells up to create new crust. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is the most famous, running down the center of the Atlantic Ocean from the Arctic to the Southern Ocean. It's a jagged, volcanic spine, with peaks rising thousands of meters above the surrounding seafloor. In some places, the peaks break the surface, forming volcanic islands like Iceland, the Azores, and Ascension Island. But most of the ridge remains submerged, a hidden mountain range that few people will ever see. The ridge is dotted with hydrothermal vents, as we've discussed, and the volcanic activity creates a constantly shifting landscape. Lava flows reshape the terrain. New vents open while old ones close. The ridge is alive, geologically speaking, a place of continuous creation. Then there are the seamounts, underwater mountains that rise from the ocean floor but don't reach the surface. There are an estimated 100,000 seamounts in the world's oceans, though only a fraction have been mapped or explored. Many are extinct volcanoes, formed millions of years ago when magma punched through the oceanic crust. Others are still active, occasionally erupting, sending plumes of ash and lava into the water. Seamounts are hotspots of biodiversity. Their slopes provide hard substrate for corals, sponges, and other sessile organisms to attach to. Currents sweep around the seamounts, bringing nutrients and plankton, which attract fish, squid, and marine mammals. Some seamounts host unique ecosystems, with species found nowhere else. Because seamounts are isolated from each other, they act like islands, driving speciation and endemism. But seamounts are also vulnerable. Because they're rich in fish and invertebrates, they're heavily targeted by commercial fishing. Bottom trawling, a fishing method that drags weighted nets across the seafloor, can devastate seamount ecosystems. scraping away corals and sponges that took centuries to grow. Many seamounts have been reduced to rubble, their biodiversity obliterated in a matter of hours. Submarine canyons are another striking feature of the ocean floor. These are deep, steep-sided valleys that cut through the continental shelf and slope, often extending from the mouths of rivers on land far out into the deep ocean. The Hudson Canyon, off the coast of New York, plunges to depths of more than 4,000 meters. Monterey Canyon, off the coast of California, rivals the Grand Canyon in depth and scale. These canyons are carved by underwater avalanches, turbidity currents, fast-moving flows of sediment and water that cascade down the continental slope. These currents are triggered by earthquakes, storms, or simply the accumulation of sediment that becomes unstable and collapses. They're incredibly powerful, capable of scouring deep channels and transporting vast amounts of sediment far out to sea. Submarine canyons are conduits for nutrients, funneling organic material from the shallow coastal zones into the deep sea. This makes them rich feeding grounds, attracting a diversity of life. Corals grow on the canyon walls. Fish gather in the currents. Whales and dolphins hunt along the canyon edges. Then there are the abyssal plains, vast, flat expanses that cover more than 50% of the ocean floor. These are some of the flattest places on Earth, with slopes of less than 1 inch 1,000. They're formed by the slow accumulation of fine sediment clay, silt, the remains of microscopic organisms that drifts down from above and settles evenly across the seafloor. The abyssal plains seem monotonous, but even here there's diversity. Small hills, called abyssal hills, dot the plains, created by ancient volcanic activity. Tracks and trails crisscross the sediment, left by sea cucumbers, worms, and other burrowing organisms. Occasionally, a whale fall or other large food source creates a temporary oasis of life. Finally, there are the ocean trenches, which we've already discussed in the context of the Hadal Zone. These are the deepest features on Earth, formed at subduction zones where one tectonic plate is forced beneath another. The Mariana Trench, the Tonga Trench, the Philippine Trench, each is a scar in the ocean floor, a place where the crust is being recycled into the mantle. Trenches are narrow, steep-sided, and incredibly deep. Standing at the edge of a trench would be like standing at the rim of the Grand Canyon, except the canyon would be underwater, and the bottom would be another 5,000 meters below the surrounding seafloor. All of this, the ridges, seamounts, canyons, plains, and trenches exists beneath the ocean, hidden from view. We have maps of these features, but they're coarse, low-resolution maps derived from satellite data. The details remain unknown. Most seamounts haven't been visited. Most canyons haven't been explored. Most of the abyssal plains have never been seen by human eyes. This lack of knowledge has real consequences. We're mining the ocean floor for minerals, laying cables across it, fishing its slopes and peaks, all without fully understanding what's there. It's like developing a city without a map, bulldozing through forests without knowing what species live in them. As we push deeper into the ocean, as technology allows us to explore more of the seafloor, we're beginning to appreciate the complexity and beauty of this hidden world. It's a landscape as rich and varied as anything on land, shaped by forces as powerful as any on Earth. And it's a reminder that our planet is not just what we see from the surface, it's everything, from the highest peaks to the deepest trenches, and most of it remains unexplored. The search for life, what the ocean teaches us about other worlds. The deep ocean isn't just a strange place, it's a laboratory, a testbed for understanding how life survives in extreme environments. And the lessons we learn from Earth's abyss have profound implications for the search for life beyond our planet. For decades, the search for extraterrestrial life focused on planets in the habitable zone, the region around a star where liquid water could exist on a planet's surface. Mars, in our own solar system, once had liquid water. Venus might have had oceans in its distant past. Exoplanets orbiting other stars are evaluated based on whether they're the right distance from their sun, whether they have atmospheres, whether their temperatures allow water to remain liquid. But the discovery of hydrothermal vents and chemosynthetic ecosystems changed the equation. Life, we now know, doesn't require sunlight. It doesn't even require a surface. All it needs is liquid water, a source of energy, and the right chemical building blocks. This opens up an enormous range of possibilities. Consider Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Europa is covered by a thick shell of ice, perhaps 10 to 30 kilometers deep. The surface temperature is around -160 degrees Celsius, far too cold for liquid water. But beneath the ice, evidence suggests, is a global ocean liquid water kept warm by tidal heating from Jupiter's immense gravitational pull. Europa's ocean is likely in contact with a rocky seafloor, and where liquid water meets rock, especially in a geologically active environment, you get chemistry. Hydrothermal vents could exist on Europa's ocean floor, just as they do on Earth. And if they do, there's no reason chemosynthetic life couldn't exist there. We'd never see it. The ice shell is too thick to penetrate with current technology, but missions are being planned. NASA's Europa Clipper, ESA's JUICE mission to study the moon more closely, to search for signs of organic molecules in the plumes of water vapor that erupt from cracks in the ice. Enceladus, a small moon of Saturn, is another candidate. It also has a subsurface ocean, and it's even more active than Europa. Plumes of water vapor shoot out from Enceladus's south pole, carrying ice grains and complex organic molecules. The Cassini spacecraft flew through these plumes and detected compounds like methane, hydrogen, and carbon dioxide chemicals consistent with hydrothermal activity. Some scientists believe Enceladus is the best place in the solar system to search for life, better even than Mars. It has liquid water, chemical energy, and it's actively venting material into space, making it easier to sample without landing. But the parallels to Earth go beyond chemistry. The organisms at hydrothermal vents have taught us that life can survive and thrive in complete darkness, under crushing pressure, in water saturated with toxic chemicals. These are conditions that exist on Europa, Enceladus, and potentially other icy moons. If life arose independently on Earth in such environments, and some scientists believe it did, then it could arise elsewhere under similar conditions. There's also Titan, Saturn's largest moon, which has lakes and seas of liquid methane and ethane on its surface. While these aren't water, they're still liquid environments, and some scientists speculate that life could evolve using methane as a solvent instead of water. It's a long shot, wildly speculative, but the deep ocean's methane seeps where life thrives. On methane-based chemosynthesis show that life can exploit methane as an energy source. Even Mars, once thought to be barren, is now being reconsidered. While its surface is cold, dry, and hostile, there's evidence of subsurface water briny aquifers deep beneath the Martian surface. If microbial life exists on Mars, it's likely underground, in these hidden reservoirs, surviving on chemical energy much like the microbes in Earth's deep biosphere. The deep biosphere is another lesson from the ocean. It's not just the seafloor that harbors life, it's the rocks beneath. Microbes live kilometers beneath the ocean floor, in the cracks and pores of the crust, surviving on hydrogen gas produced by chemical reactions between water and rock. These organisms are incredibly slow-growing, dividing perhaps once every 1,000 years, but they're remarkably widespread. Scientists estimate that the deep biosphere could contain as much biomass as all the life on Earth's surface combined. It's a hidden, subterranean world, one that challenges our assumptions about where life can exist. And it suggests that even on worlds that appear sterile, whose surfaces are frozen or irradiated, or otherwise hostile life might persist underground, waiting to be discovered. The search for life beyond Earth is no longer just about finding planets that look like ours. It's about recognizing that life is adaptable, resourceful, and endlessly creative. The deep ocean has shown us that life doesn't need sunlight, doesn't need a comfortable temperature, doesn't need anything we'd consider hospitable. It just needs a chance, a crack in the rock, a seep of chemicals, a gradient of energy. And if that's true on Earth, in the most extreme environments our planet has to offer, then it could be true elsewhere. The universe, it turns out, might be far more hospitable to life than we ever imagined. Not because it's full of garden worlds, but because life, as we've learned from the deep ocean, can bloom in the darkness, in the cold, under pressures that would obliterate steel. The ocean has taught us humility. It's taught us that alien life might not look alien at all. It might look like a tube worm, or a snailfish, or a mat of bacteria clinging to a vent chimney. It's taught us that the boundary between possible and impossible is far more porous than we once believed, and it's taught us that the most alien place in our solar system might not be on Mars or Europa or Enceladus. It might be right here, a few miles beneath the waves, where life has been thriving, unseen, for hundreds of millions of years. Future exploration, technology, and discovery. For all that we've learned about the deep ocean, we've barely scratched the surface. The vast majority of the seafloor remains unmapped, unexplored, unknown. But that's beginning to change, driven by advances in technology that are finally allowing us to peer into the abyss with clarity and precision. Let's start with mapping. As we discussed earlier, only about 25% of the ocean floor has been mapped to high resolution, but there are initiatives underway to change that. Seabed 2030, a project launched by the Nippon Foundation and the General Bathymetric Chart of the Oceans, GEBCO, aims to produce a complete, high-resolution map of the entire ocean floor by the year 2030. It's an ambitious goal, requiring unprecedented levels of international cooperation and technological innovation. The project is coordinating data from governments, research institutions, and private companies, pooling ship-based sonar surveys, satellite observations, and crowd-sourced data from vessels of opportunity, commercial ships equipped with sonar that contribute data as they travel. Autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs, are also playing a critical role. These are unmanned submarines that can be programmed to follow specific paths, collecting sonar data, water samples, and seafloor imagery. AUVs can operate for days or weeks at a time, mapping large areas without the need for a ship to remain overhead. They're more efficient and cost-effective than traditional ship-based surveys. Some AUVs are designed to dive to extreme depths. The Orpheus, developed by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, is a next-generation AUV designed to explore the Hadal Zone. It uses advanced AI for navigation and decision-making, allowing it to autonomously avoid obstacles and adjust its mission in real time. The goal is to make deep-sea exploration less reliant on expensive, crewed missions. Remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, remain essential for detailed exploration. These are tethered to a ship by a cable that provides power and allows real-time control. ROVs are equipped with high-definition cameras, manipulator arms, and a suite of scientific instruments. They can collect samples, conduct experiments, and observe behaviors that would be impossible to study otherwise. Crewed submersibles, vehicles like Alvin, the Limiting Factor, and the upcoming Triton submarines offer a unique advantage: human presence. While ROVs and AUVs are invaluable, there's no substitute for having a scientist in the vehicle, able to make split-second decisions, notice subtle details, and respond to unexpected discoveries in real time. Crewed missions are expensive and risky, but they often yield insights that automated systems miss. New technologies are also addressing the challenges of deep-sea communication. Radio waves don't travel through water, so traditional wireless communication doesn't work. Instead, researchers are developing acoustic communication systems using sound waves to transmit data. These systems are slower than radio, but they allow ROVs and AUVs to communicate with surface vessels even at great depths. Another promising technology is environmental DNA, aDNA sampling. Every organism sheds DNA into its environment: skin cells, mucus, waste. By collecting water samples and analyzing the DNA within them, scientists can identify species without ever seeing them. This is revolutionizing deep-sea research, allowing scientists to survey biodiversity quickly and non-invasively. Advances in imaging are also transforming exploration. High-definition cameras, coupled with powerful lighting systems, produce stunningly clear images of the deep sea. Some cameras use special filters to penetrate the murky water around hydrothermal vents, revealing details that would otherwise be obscured. Others use ultraviolet or fluorescence imaging to detect bioluminescent organisms or substances invisible to the naked eye. There's also growing interest in deep-sea mining, which presents both opportunities and challenges. The ocean floor contains vast deposits of valuable minerals, copper, cobalt, rare earth elements, concentrated in nodules, crusts, and vent deposits. As terrestrial resources become scarcer, industry is eyeing the deep sea as a new frontier for extraction. But deep-sea mining is controversial. The ecosystems around vents and seamounts are fragile, and mining could destroy them. Scientists are calling for thorough environmental impact assessments, protected areas, and international regulations to ensure that any mining is conducted sustainably. The deep ocean is too poorly understood to exploit recklessly. What's clear is that the future of ocean exploration will require collaboration between nations, institutions, scientists, and engineers. The ocean is a global commons, and understanding it, protecting it, and managing it sustainably will demand unprecedented cooperation. We're also beginning to see the ocean as not just a place to explore, but a place to learn from. Biomimicry, the practice of studying nature to inspire human technology, has already drawn on the ocean for innovations. The design of submarine hulls has been influenced by whale skin. Adhesives inspired by mussels can bond underwater. Bioluminescent proteins are used in medical diagnostics. As we explore deeper, as we discover more, the ocean will continue to teach us. It will reveal new strategies for surviving extreme conditions, new biochemical pathways, new materials and structures that could inspire everything from medicine to engineering. And beyond the practical benefits, there's the simple, profound value of discovery. Every new species, every unexplored canyon, every glowing jellyfish drifting through the dark. These are reminders that our planet is still full of mystery. We live in an age of satellites and GPS, of instant information and global connectivity. It's easy to think we've mapped everything, discovered everything, understood everything, but the ocean reminds us otherwise. It's a frontier, vast and largely unknown, waiting at the edge of our understanding. And as technology advances, as we push deeper and stay longer, the secrets it holds will slowly, gradually come to light. Closing reflections. So, here we are, at the end of our journey. We've descended from the sunlit surface, through the twilight zone, past the midnight depths, all the way to the Hadal trenches at the bottom of the world. We've explored landscapes hidden beneath the waves, met creatures adapted to extremes we can barely fathom, and witnessed ecosystems powered not by the sun, but by the heat and chemistry of the Earth itself. And through it all, one truth has emerged clearly. The ocean floor is more alien than Mars. Not because it's farther away, it's not. Not because it's less accessible, though in many ways it is. But because it represents an environment so fundamentally different from the one we know, so extreme in its conditions and so bizarre in its life, that it challenges our very understanding of what a living planet can be. Mars is a desert. It's cold, dry, and barren, with a thin atmosphere and a surface scoured by wind and radiation. If life ever existed there, it's gone now, or hidden so deeply we may never find it. Mars is fascinating, yes, but it's also, in many ways, empty. The ocean floor, by contrast, is alive. It's teeming with organisms that glow, that hunt, that build entire ecosystems from chemicals that would kill us in seconds. It's a place where the impossible is routine, where life has found ways to thrive in conditions we once thought were incompatible with existence. And yet we know it so poorly. We've mapped it at resolutions far coarser than Mars. We've explored only a fraction of its trenches, vents, and plains. We've identified only a tiny percentage of the species that live there. The ocean floor remains, in the truest sense, an alien world, one that happens to exist on the same planet we call home. Why does this matter? Why should we care about mapping the seafloor, about discovering deep-sea species, about understanding ecosystems that exist miles beneath the surface, far from human civilization? There are practical reasons. The ocean regulates our climate, absorbing heat and carbon dioxide, driving weather patterns and ocean currents. The seafloor holds clues to Earth's geological history, records of past climates, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. It may contain resources, minerals, energy, perhaps even new medicines derived from deep-sea organisms. But beyond the practical, there's something deeper. The ocean reminds us that we live on a planet full of mystery, full of places we haven't seen, full of life we don't yet understand. In an age when it feels like everything has been discovered, the ocean offers humility. It tells us there's still more to learn, still more to explore, still more to wonder at. And it tells us that alien worlds don't require spaceships. They're here, beneath the waves, waiting. All we have to do is look. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, think about the ocean. Picture the darkness, the pressure, the cold. Picture the creatures drifting through the abyss, glowing softly, hunting silently. Picture the vents, chimneys of rock and mineral, pouring superheated water into the frigid sea. Picture the trenches, deeper than mountains are tall, where life persists against all odds. And remember, this is Earth. This is our planet, as much as the forests and deserts and cities we see every day. The ocean floor isn't separate, isn't distant, isn't alien in the sense of being foreign. It's part of us, part of the same world, the same story, the same astonishing experiment in what life can be. It's a reminder that our planet is more than we know, more than we see, more than we've yet discovered. And it's a call, gentle, patient, but insistent, to keep looking, keep exploring, keep learning, because the ocean still has secrets, it still has mysteries, it still has stories to tell. And we've only just begun to listen. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the deep. If you enjoyed this exploration, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Just About Earth for more stories about the wonders of our world and the universe beyond. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with glowing creatures and hidden worlds beneath the waves.